Cool, you guys. Welcome. Episode 3, Educate and Elevate with Pablo and Armando. Today we got a very special guest, Leo. Thank you for being here, brother.
Thank you. Good morning, brothers. Good morning.
So a few announcements before we get started. This is obviously episode 3. We already had 1 and 2. Very excited for this. First announcement, February 21st at 6 p.m. We have an estate planning seminar with Brianna and Claudia. We're going to be going over living trust. We're going to be going how to avoid estate taxes, how to trademark your business, differences between a will and a trust, life insurance planning, etc. So you don't want to miss it. And we have a couple other gems just dropping through. But today's a very special day. Tax season is approaching. A bunch of people are flooding the DMs with
big time
deductions, S-corps, what to do. So you know what? Who better than to bring in the professional that we know and our very good friend, Leo. Thank you, bro, for being here.
Welcome, bro.
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, 100%. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Saturday morning?
Saturday morning, man.
Yeah.
Yep.
What are you usually doing on a Saturday, bro?
Usually on a Saturday, honest, man, I'll be at the office.
Yeah.
I'll go to the gym in a couple hours and then head to the office. I got to be planning everything, you know. Season starts in about 2 weeks, so.
Yeah, I know we've been meeting for like couple months now, and it's just like usually now you're gearing up towards tax season and doing all that stuff. We went to the office the other day and he had his whole bed there set up. I love that, bro. That's what's up.
The dedication. He made the second room into his own room.
Yeah, man. I got to put in those hours and I got to sleep as well. So trying to just
maximize time.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
Bro, in the life of a tax professional, obviously we know, we talk to tax professionals as well, and they say, come February, don't even talk to me. It's just busy. Talk to us about how does that work out, like as a being in your profession for someone who doesn't know how the life balance is for a tax professional.
It really is knowing that you have to take that time. Like there's really no way around it because there's things that just become unexpected. There's clients you have to see. There's going to be setbacks, you get new clients. So you're always going to be thrown a curveball about things, So it's just really, for me personally, is to mentally prepare, physically, mentally. And I think one thing that really helps me out a lot compared to maybe other people is that I really have a passion for what I do. I love what I do. I really do not see it that it's a job, So for me, I enjoy what I do. I love numbers. I love helping people. I love finding solutions for people. So, for me, it's I enjoy it.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that's a huge factor of why I'm able to do what I do, and I enjoy it.
Yeah, because you guys are there all the time. All the time. You always book. Tax season's crazy. So how's the work-life balance, like being a family member? Obviously, you're telling me a little bit about how you were brought up as well.
Yeah, as far as, I have a daughter who's 13, and, honestly, for me, I'm very blessed because I have, my sister that supports me not only as my assistant, but also, a good head on her shoulders and is able to be there for my daughter as well, also her mother as well, too, that she plays a huge role. So I definitely have family that play a huge role in having that balance that she knows I'm not available sometimes, but, she's being shown love. And I do take the time to be able to do things with her as well.
Nice.
But, I just do the best, and they know that I am doing the best that I can.
Oh, bro, you're hard working, man.
Yeah,
that's huge. I always like to say, like, there was a Kobe interview. I forgot which one it was. You guys know I'm always referring to like Kobe interviews.
Yeah,
sir.
And he goes. Someone asked him, he's like, does your professional life or does your family life take a hit, or do your relationships take a hit when you're in season or when you're chasing that greatness, right? One of the things we strive to do on the podcast, with our guests, with our mentality, Armando and I, we really have like this mantra of chasing greatness, right? And sometimes, people get it confused. Like you have to, in order to chase a specific niche or profession, or you want to chase greatness and whatever it is that you want to do, this word of balance is always thrown around, right? Balance is like, it's hard. Sometimes it's really hard to balance. That's a funny word sometimes. I was having a conversation the other day, and there's like this exercise that we do. It's in the journal I gave you too, right? The wheel of life. Mm-hmm. And you have to like rate yourself on all these different types of like pillars of your life, finance, family, your fitness, your business, your mindset, your spirituality, all these things, right? And you rate yourself, and then you connect the dots, and then you ultimately see like where you're lacking in a certain place.
Yes.
And sometimes in life, you have to sacrifice maybe a little season, right?
No.
So even in like being in tax season, like, yeah, I'm sure sometimes it does take a hit, right?
Yeah.
Specific parts of your life take a hit. But, talk to us a little bit about like getting into, because you weren't always, how long have you been doing taxes for?
I've been doing taxes for 10 years.
So before 10 years, like what got you into doing taxes? Because I know you come from real estate, right? Or?
Yes. Yeah. So I started real estate when I was 19 years old. By the time I was 21, I had my own mortgage company, real estate company, and I did that until the market crashed in 2007. So I was always good with numbers, always did my own books and did my own accounting. And I've always been an entrepreneur at a young age. So when the market crashed, I obviously had to pivot. So I pretty much used my strength was my own administration. And I started learning how to do business administration. And that's really what taught me a lot of the ins and outs. And I didn't start with taxes. I started first with business administration. Then I did accounting. And then I did corporations. And then the last piece was actually taxes. But what really helped me is that I understood the lingo, not only that, the experience, of making so many mistakes at a young age and being able to actually see that and instill that. So in the beginning, I did not have a lot of experience, but what I did have is I made a lot of mistakes. So I actually used that, brought it onto light to be able to show others not to make those mistakes.
Yeah.
So that's how I was able to start building myself up. And it's taken 12 years to be able to get to where I'm at. And I'm still developing my skill set because to me, it's very important. You have to continue developing your skill set, because I want to be able to elevate myself. For me, it's elevating myself and it elevates those around me as well.
Yeah.
That's what I care about the most.
That's sick.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think the mentorship, I think people talk about finding ways to accelerate your growth in life. I've been told that mentorship is one of the key ways to accelerate your growth, to get faster in life. Because through them, you gain the experience, like your experience, right? You said you gained you had 12 years plus. You went through the 2008, big economic downturn, which took out a lot of people, but here you are surviving and thriving.
Yeah. And I think mindset is very important because also positioning yourself, obviously when the market crashed, last time I was in the side of real estate, so it completely affected my business 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously with with COVID and with things that are happening now, it's different because I position myself differently.
Nice.
And mindset is very important because, at the end of the day, if you're going to work hard, the balance that people say to have, I think it's very important to know what is it that you want.
Yeah.
I think it's more important is creating the life that you really want.
That's right.
Because if you actually use creating your life instead of saying balance, there is no sacrifice.
Yes.
Because it's actually enjoying the moments,
Right.
because you're working towards that.
Yeah.
So I think that removes the whole sacrifice, removes the balance, because you know that you have your priorities in line with what you want to achieve. So I think to me, it's creating the life that you want.
I think that's big. I was actually we just had a seminar this past Tuesday, and one of the things that I talked about was generational wealth, building generational wealth and stuff like that. But before it's building generational wealth or building a business or whatever it is that you want to do, you got to create the habits in order to do so.
Yes.
Right? If you don't have the right habits, then you're not going to, for example, I'll use an example, everyone wants to give back to charity or give back to a church. Well, if you're not doing it when you're making $50,000 a year, you're probably not going to do it when you're making $1 million, $5 million, right? So you got to create those habits. And the same thing with generational wealth, right? Same thing with building a business. You have to create those habits early on so that you could now carry those habits forward and continue to do that.
Yes, I agree 100%.
Yeah, it's all about the mind. And creating those habits starts with the mindset.
Yes.
Right? Same thing with the business. A lot of people think that, oh man, a CPA costs too much or a tax guy, their fees are too high. Well, you guys don't understand how much they're actually going to save you on taxes. Right. Would you rather pay fees or would you rather pay taxes? It's up to you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
No.
or doing it correctly. There's this one quote by Gary Vee. He says that money doesn't make you better. It just amplifies more who you are.
Yes.
So if you're, you could be making $20,000, let's say $20,000 a year, and you're already giving back to the community. Imagine when you have money, how much more you're going to give back. But if you're super stingy, and disrespectful with making that much money, imagine when you make $200,000 a year. So I thought that was very same as well. Just building up those small habits of if you're gonna do something now, you start now. Even if you're not there yet, it's kind of like leading up to the small wins lead to big wins.
And that's one of the things, bro, that I really actually like picked up when we first started connect. We connected almost about a year ago, right?
Yes.
We've already kind of done some business together, stuff like that. But one of the things I like about Leo is that you go into his office, like he's very organized. And that's one of the things, like I've been into people's tax office before, and it's like they have stuff all over the place. If here's a nugget for you guys, like write this down, like go back, listen to it. Like if your tax guy or your tax gal is not organized, be like a little nervous.
That's a good tip.
Yeah. Like I look at those things. First thing I noticed, I was like, dang, everything is nice and tight. Yeah. Like he's very like, he loves the color red. Shout out to Leo. He loves the color red. Like a lot of these things, like, but see, to me, it's like, if he's organized outside, his thoughts, his business, like everything, his habits are very organized. He's very routine. He's always on time. Like those are little things that you want to pick up, you know, especially from your tax guy. You do not want to be in tax problems. So yeah, habits are huge, man.
Yes, they are, man. Very important.
Yeah, that's a good tip. One thing I did want to know, obviously you told me you were from Mexico City.
Yes.
So that's mom and dad were both born there?
Yes, mom and dad were born there. Yep.
Nice. How was it obviously growing up then with Mexican parents, Latino parents that speak Spanish predominantly?
Well, you know, my parents brought me to LA when I was 6 months old, and I was raised here, you know, and my parents always, you know, worked hard. You know, my dad had 2 jobs, and even when I was 4 years old, my dad used to sell at the swap meet. You know, from used clothes to picture frames to
and
furniture.
get your hands on.
So I've always been around business since I was little, you know. So for me, obviously being raised by my parents, you know, just like anything, there was always limitations, you know, but, you know, they did the best that they could, you know. So for me, I always had that work ethic since I was little to be able to do that, because obviously I had to work for what I wanted, you know. But yeah, I mean, overall, you know, our parents do the best that they can.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
Claro que sí. Yeah, bro. I mean, they're both. I can testify the same. Both my parents. They were. My mom was born in Durango, Mexico. Cool. My dad was born here in LA, but basically grew up over there. Yeah. So like having that growing up, like it's always interesting to see. Like my mom predominantly Spanish speaking, so you know it's always having that barrier, but they do the best they can. And one thing that's not short is hard work. No. Right, and that's something Pablo says is like. For our people, hard work is not the problem. It's really just education, financial literacy, and putting themselves in the best position possible. Because imagine if we implement hard work and then now with the financial tool set that we could teach to these people, imagine what we could do.
And our platform, man, just so we could talk a little bit about this, like we're not just for the Latino community, we're for everybody, but we want to really educate the Latino community, right? So we want to work with Latino entrepreneurs and business owners and really educate. I feel like our people, it's time for our people to really like get educated, right? Get educated. Don't just, a lot of times we have problems, you know, our community has problems trusting, like, I'll just put my money under the mattress. No, like there's different ways that you could do it, right? I'll just go to the H&R Block down the street instead of hiring a professional. It's like, well, yeah, they're professionals, but why not build a relationship with somebody that could actually give you nuggets, right? On how to build your business, how to save on taxes, how to reinvest that money, how to grow it, how to protect it, right? And I think ahora es tiempo, like now's the time to be, you know, proactive in those movements, right? Yes. And we want to educate our communities. So, I mean, that's why obviously, you know, educate and elevate, like, of course, we're going to elevate your mindsets. We're going to elevate your thoughts and stuff like that and your habits, but we want to give you guys education, right? Yeah.
Well, one question I have then, since we're on the topic, is, Vallejo, for your experience, what have you seen, and maybe one thing that at least the community is lacking in terms of knowledge, or when tax season comes up, something that people always, you know, you're like, this is kind of what we need more education on, or is there something at least that stands out?
You know, I think it comes to analyzing, because that's something that I do very well. And actually looking at their habits. And that comes into personal habits and even their business habits. And that comes down to bank accounts. Because when I do their accounting, I'm able to see everything, right? And sometimes I always get this all the time. I don't know where the money went, you know? Yet that's like, really? Like, you don't know where the money went, right? It's there, you know? And then when I start breaking it down and you have all these expenses, that's where it went, You know, so it's like sometimes, and it even happens to me, you know, we work and money's coming in, but then we don't realize, you know, how much we spent.
Yeah.
You know, and I think what's important is to actually have a budget because, you know, it's very important to know what is it that you're working for and budgeting and making sure you're making adjustments. I think evaluating not only your budget, but even yourself, you know, to be able to make sure like, hey, you know what, this past year we spent $3,000 on, you know, on food or whatever the case may be. It's like, I think it's important to do that because if you can't measure that, well, then how can you continue moving forward?
So one thing I said, I'll defend the person that you're speaking about. Then just to put an opposition, I would say, well, when you're constantly working, you have a family to take care of, and let's say maybe a family is, let's say like not everybody has the same goal as in we're gonna, you know, build to something. Is there some financial maybe tips that are like that individual could do that's like working all the time, that gets home late, has like five kids, you know, I'll call me Bobby. It's like, oh, man, maybe I don't have time to sit down and do my numbers. Is there maybe something that we could do? I know for debt, there's like debt snowball, right? That's a good little
It's a
tip.
good strategy.
Yeah,
We could talk about that for sure at some point, but
Yeah. I think, you know, it depends because if we're talking about entrepreneurs, I think, you know, depreciation is something that's very important. I think what's important where it can really help you out a lot is to actually have your accounting done before the fiscal year, you know, November, December.
start early.
So like that, we can be able to review that and be able to say, okay, you know, if at the end of the day, your tax liability might be $40,000, you know, what can we do? Can you buy more material? Can you invest in marketing for the following year? You pay for it that year, but you're going to use it for next year, you know, or go purchase a vehicle and really break down those numbers because that ends up saving you a lot.
You did that for my client, Karen. She ended up buying a car.
Oh, she did?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
She ended up buying a car.
Cool.
And that's because of your advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, going back to preparing before the year ends.
Yes.
And that's, I guess tax season really doesn't start in February. It really starts in December.
100%.
The year before.
I always like to say, like, prior planning prevents piss poor performance.
Yes.
If you don't got it planned, it's kind of like our schedule, right? Armando and I've been on this. Like, if it's not scheduled, it's not done. So if it's not measurable, it's not going to get done, right? Chances are, if you actually hitting that goal, is going to become a lot less. Yes. If you're not looking at your bank statements, if you don't have an accountant, which I think we should get into that, talking about accountants, right? How important it is to have an accountant. So how important it is to have an accountant, right? Talk about like the process of like, because you guys do accounting for a lot of your clients as well, or because that's part of the business that you guys have. So what you know, maybe for a first time, I'm speaking to like the first time, maybe entrepreneurs in their first, let's just call it 2 years. You know, they're like, I think I could do it all. Just like every entrepreneur in the beginning, you think you could do it all in the beginning, and then you figure out that in order to really grow and scale, you need a team. Part of that team is an accountant, which you've showed me, right?
Yes.
Talk about that process with having an accountant on your team and the benefits of that.
Well, I mean, it benefits in many ways because not only is to be able to review your expenses, right, but to also break down the numbers of what makes sense. If you're going to go purchase a vehicle, it's like we have to break down those numbers because if you're going to go purchase a vehicle, people are going to say, okay, well, their mindset is if I go purchase a vehicle, I'm going to have $1,000 payment, right? Well, at the same time, you have to look at it, how's your credit? Is your credit strong? If you have a tax liability of $20,000, right? If you divide that by 12, how much is that payment, right? So you can actually get a vehicle every year and do that. Now, how does that help you? Well, instead of paying the IRS, you're driving a new vehicle. And I mean, you work very hard, so why not reward yourself? You know, that where instills like even rewarding your family, right? Because you have a vehicle, you worked yourself hard. Not only that is seeing how far your money goes. Because if you're spending money, whether material went up, whether you're spending it with employees, you have to know like how much are you spending and how much of that is generating more revenue. You know, if you go ahead and say, I'm going to hire an employee and it's going to be $4,000 a month, where's the value on there? Like how much is how much is the business going to make more? So it's very important when you're making those decisions to be able to really analyze those numbers. Does it make sense? Because sometimes you just go ahead and do it hoping that it works out, but then you don't see the expenses. Because I can go specifically if it's a company that needs to buy material, well, material goes up, right? So it's like you have to analyze all those things because your profit margin can shorten. It'll become smaller and smaller. So the thing is you want to analyze. Sometimes people go ahead and want to spend more, but it's really looking at all your numbers and try to hone in on your profit margin. Where are we? Are we at 30%? Are we at 40%? Are we at 20%? Well, what can we do to make adjustments better so we can have a higher profit margin? You know, that's whether if you sell products wholesale or retail, you really have to analyze all those things. So it's really numbers, you know.
And that's what the team does, right?
Yes.
As an accountant, that's what they're doing.
It's a big nugget because a lot of people spend money because they know they need deductions, so they start spending. But like you're saying, how much of that money that you spend is actually going to produce you back income?
Exactly.
So dropping into a car, for example, talk to so what qualifies and why would someone buy a car? Let's say at the end of the year, towards the end of the year. They're looking for a deduction. Why a car?
So if you purchase a vehicle that weighs 6,000 pounds or more, that could be written off. And you can buy a brand new car, a used car with a down payment, no down payment. It doesn't matter. So if you purchase a vehicle for $40,000, you can write off that whole amount that same year as long as it weighs 6,000 pounds or more. So normally that's where I would do the math for you to be able to say, okay, if you have a tax liability of $30,000 and you go purchase a vehicle that's 6,000 pounds or more, you're going to offset that tax liability and not have no liability whatsoever. Now, the other key thing too, why depreciation is so important, it comes to being self-employed. When you're self-employed, we have an issue. A lot of people try to write everything off, and then when they want to qualify for a home, they can't, right?
Yeah.
But when you use depreciation, the numbers work differently to where it benefits you instead of having a straight expense. The depreciation, and this scenario is only for financing, if you have $40,000 of depreciation, they give that back to you. The lender will give it back to you on your line 31 to be able to use that as income. So if your net is 30 and you purchase a vehicle for 40, you're depreciated, right? They're going to add that 40 to the 30. So now you made $70,000. So not only did you benefit on paying no taxes, but you actually have that income to be able to qualify.
Wow.
Does it matter how they're set up as an entity?
No, it doesn't matter. You can be sole proprietor with the Schedule C, as simple as that. You can do it through the corp. It all depends. It's how we end up doing it to where it benefits the most to the client.
So, all right. So I got a little bit of a question here too, and this is a question I actually got by a relative earlier this week, and it's so he's single, no kids. Obviously, he's going to get taxed a lot, right?
Yeah.
So for somebody that's single, has no kids, maybe they have a W-2, that's how they get paid, but they're getting demolished by taxes. Is there a way that they could find a way to minimize their tax liability? Like what's a good strategy? This individual is also looking to create a business on the side, but still keeping his W-2 pay, right?
Yeah.
So what's a good way that they could actually minimize, their tax liability?
Definitely would help if they're a W-2 and then want to start a business, is to be able to actually start a business as a sole prop, simple, not incorporating it just as a Schedule C, and that opens up the ability to be able to write off all these expenses, which would mean like, if it's a home-based business. So if he can write off now his computer, office furniture, copier, his cell phone, mileage for the car, all those things now are expenses. And what really helps is if he's getting taxed so heavily because he's single with no dependents and he goes and purchases all these things for the business and it's $10,000 of expenses, he's actually going to get money back because he paid into the system. So that's important. Not only that, if he pays rent, you can actually be able to itemize some of those expenses as well as a home-based business.
If he's using part of the house or rent. Mm-hmm. Got it.
What are some of the qualifications to make your primary residence a home-based business?
That's a good question.
Well, as long as you're a homeowner, you can be able to go ahead, and the way that we determine that is based off the square feet of the home, and then be able to say, okay, you're using 300 square feet of that, right? So when you're a homeowner, you have mortgage interest, taxes, hazard insurance, and then what ends up happening is you state a percentage of it, right? So it'll give me like 25%. So now I can write off 25% of your taxes, 25% of the mortgage interest that you paid. Nice. So all those things are expenses that now we can add on there, that you can do it. Not only that, but you can depreciate even that 20% as well on the property, because when you have a principal residence, you can't depreciate that. A lot of people go ahead and say, okay, I need to buy a home, right? There's a difference. Tax credits. Yes, you're going to get tax credit, but you're not going to get expenses off of that because that's not an investment. That's your principal residence.
So let's separate the two, if we may. So being a primary residence, if, you buy your first home, what tax deductions are available to you as your primary residence?
So if it's a primary residence as a W-2, you're simply are going to have the credits of the taxes you paid and the mortgage interest.
Interest rate.
Yeah. If the husband and wife is just a W-2, that's all they're going to be able to do. There isn't anything else that you can do, unless if you start up a business, then now you can do things differently.
Like a home-based business.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter how they're set up in terms of like corporate, S corp, C corp. Like, what's the difference? I know I was just looking. We just dropped a question on IG. We always like to do questions before we go live, so that questions come in. We want to be able to answer those. One of my followers asked the difference between an S corp, C corp, and how did that what's the difference between that and their business?
Okay, so I mean, I get a lot where people go ahead and start an LLC, right? And there's nothing wrong with any of the entity that's really becomes tax strategy, because an LLC, the most simplest form that you can be able to file for an entity that protects you from your personal to your business. Okay, you don't have to do annual minutes or resolutions. That's why you hear start up an LLC, right? But it is not the best entity for taxes because, for example, a C corp does tax returns separate from yourself. Okay, an LLC, if it's a single member LLC, then that LLC gets reported on a Schedule C using the information of the LLC. Now, for me, I don't like to do that because you're going to disclose all your expenses on there. When you do a C corp, it files a tax return separate from you. Now, you're going to hear people saying, "Oh, well, you get double tax on a C corp." Yeah, that is correct. But there's ways that you can go around that as well, depending on the number. So the way that a C corp works is that it files a tax return separate from yourself. And then what ends up happening, let's say it's $100,000 after expenses, you have $20,000 left over. You can shift those $20,000 over on a 1099 to your personal, right? And then sometimes now we can add some other expenses on that Schedule C, whether it's like mileage for the vehicle. So on the corporation, we can be able to put the maintenance, the fuel as expenses. And then on the Schedule C, we can be able to do the mileage on it. So that's going to be an advantage. Now, when you do a C corp in the future, at any time, 1, 2, 3 years, you can do an S corp. Why is an S corp important? Because to me, doing a C corp allows you to structure the business where you have an advantage that as revenue continues, you have flexibility to reduce tax liabilities. Because normally when you do a corporation, the owner's not going to give themselves salary. They're not. So then what happens is the first step is give yourself salary to the point where it can, right? When you go ahead and do that, then now the rule of thumb on an S corp is to be able to give yourself a salary based off your position. So if generalize it's $30,000 that someone makes for that position, you give yourself that income. Now, why does that benefit? Is because now you have payroll taxes that can be deducted on the corporation. So you're stretching your dollar. That's one thing. Not only that, using the example of after all your expenses, you give yourself a salary of $30,000 a year. And then what ends up happening is, same example, that there's $40,000 left over, right? Those $40,000 can be given to you as dividends, which gets taxed at a lower tax rate.
Damn, that's a nugget.
So that really
go back and listen to that.
Yeah, that's
go back and listen to that. Rewind that, because that's a nugget. That's a nugget.
Yeah, and I know specifically, at least personally, a lot of nurses file S corp because we're 1099s. Not always. Most are W-2, but those that are 1099s have some of them I know have filed as 1099s and done exactly what you kind of said, where they'll pay themselves a salary. And you told me that as well. And you just mentioned some of the benefits of doing that.
Yeah. It's really, kind of really talking to the client. That's why it's so much more than just the numbers. It's really the mindset. Because a lot of people, even when they do their business, they're like, you know what, I can't afford a salary. But if I tell them, okay, what are your living expenses? No matter what happens, what's the least amount you have to take home to cover your bills? Well, it's $2,000. Well, there you go. Then start with that amount. Because no matter what, you're going to do that, And then that's how you start breaking their habits, and showing them the numbers. Because really, that's the information to be able to give people to understand that. Because when you generalize things for everyone, it's not the same. You have to specifically be able to look at an individual, know their habits, and be able to start instilling these new ones, and to let them know that it takes time to start making all these adjustments.
And at the end of the podcast, exactly what you're saying, bro. It's always good to reach out because every individual is different.
Yeah.
Like obviously we're talking generalizations, but yeah, everybody has a unique situation. So at the end, we'll definitely drop your information so they can reach out to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's one of the things that what's like one of the most common, I guess, things that you see? Because when I speak, it's like more to like the entrepreneur, the business owner. Like, what's the biggest mistake you see a lot of entrepreneurs make?
Honestly,
on their taxes.
On the taxes?
Yeah.
I think on the taxes is when they don't apply depreciation correctly, but I think more importantly is they generate revenue and they end up paying a lot more in taxes, and their mindset is to be able to save, right? But then you don't see them having any life insurance products, anything that's going to start paying dividends, because I think that's very important, because you want to protect your business. You want to protect the lifestyle that you have, your family as well, because you are the breadwinner, and you're working and you work your butt off in 5-10 years. Is like time goes by so quickly, and you're not putting anything away. I mean, when we're young, we can work 40 hours, a day, what if there is, right? But the point is that you get older, right? And then things happen in family, like, your children want to go to college. To me, it's very important to actually instill that at a very young age, when you're doing that, because if I'm going to help you save $10,000 in taxes, it's not for you to put it in your pocket, because what are you going to do with it? You're just going to spend it, right? Or maybe you put it under the bed, or you put it away in a savings that doesn't give you anything back, really, right?
Wow.
But to actually start talking to someone that does life insurance policies, that does investments, to be able to start educating them on that. Because imagine if you start that when you're 20 years old, 25 years old, 10 years from now, where do you have that stuff?
Yeah.
So to me, I think that's very important. It's something I was always intrigued about, to be able to start really educating that part, not only the taxes, but those products as well, to be able to protect the family, because I think it's very important.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many benefits. Specifically talking about that, and I don't know. Again, you could kind of like it's a gray area sometimes, right? I get a lot of questions from business owners like, because I'm making premium payments, is that something that I could potentially use as a deductible in a way, or is there, because obviously we have something called the key man insurance policy, right? It's more of a strategy. It could either be used by a term policy or a permanent policy, right? Depending on the strategy, everybody's situation is different. But a key man insurance policy, obviously, you're insuring the key man of that business, right? So if you're a business owner of your specific trade, it'd be smart to cover yourself in the case of a heart attack, stroke, cancer, something happening to you. Now you could replace the income that you bring to the table, or, you could hire somebody in your position while you recover, right? That's more of a key man type of strategy. Now, to a lot of business owners, right, this might be a solution for them when we're talking about that. So my question is that something that could be potentially some type of a, I guess, deductible? I don't know if that's the right question.
There is a possibility, but there's things that you have to do and structure it. Definitely, you have to be giving yourself a salary, which that means a W-2, not a 1099, through the corporation, right? Okay. And it has to be within reason. You can't be giving yourself $20,000 only, right? Of course. Because what ends up happening when you're an S corp and you're giving yourself $40,000 of salary, and then you're paying yourself dividends, okay, that's the right way to do it. And then now this key man policy that you're going to apply there becomes like a fringe benefit. And then now you can actually have the corporation pay that for you. It's like they own it. The corporation owns it. You own the corporation, but the corporation owns that policy that's giving a benefit to the office or the individual. So then now it becomes an expense on the corporation, which entails it's an expense on your end, as opposed to you being a W-2 and you're paying $1,000 a month on that policy. You can't write that off.
Explain the key man in just a little bit more, meaning like I like the example, meaning let's say we're business partners, right? And let's say God forbid I pass away. Now all of a sudden, let's say Pablo, I'm a key man to his business. Now all of a sudden he's affected. His income is affected. His ability to make money is affected because I'm a key man and God forbid, I'm gone, right? I'm off the grid. So now all of a sudden, because you threw an key man insurance on me, Now all of a sudden he gets to benefit from the death benefit, right?
Yeah, and of course we never want to think about that.
No, of course.
Right? We never want to think about that. But don't even look at it in the sense of like you passing.
Right.
Like just think about it in the sense of like, God forbid, like a car accident, right? Knock on wood, car accident, illness, and now you got to go recover. Well, yeah, I want you to recover. I don't want you thinking about work, right? So the reason I take out key man policy on Armando is because now, you know, in the case of an illness or something like that happening, now we could go ahead and replace him, right? And we could even pay him while he's gone to make sure that, you know, that's almost like I want to make sure that my team is taken care of, right? So that's essentially kind of like what a key man strategy is. And that could either be used by a term policy or even a permanent one too.
That's called like living benefits, right?
Yeah, living benefits, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so... yeah, I mean, there's just so many questions. Did you get any more questions that kind of fed? I know. So one of the things that you wanted to ask is like more like for the nursing community, right?
Yeah, well, we definitely touched on a big one, meaning like the home-based business. And one thing I also did want to touch on top of the nurses, because many nurses look to expand into other things because, you know, we work 3 days a week. It gives us 4 days. So either you're really busy or you're just picking up extra. So you're making a lot of money and working really hard. Shout out to my nurses. So one thing that I get a lot of questions with is becoming a real estate investor. What are the key advantages of tax wise of becoming a real estate investor and owning properties as an investment and not your primary residence?
Oh, it's huge because if I was a nurse with that type of income, I would not buy a principal residence. You know, I would rather be renting, because to me, there's no advantage of me owning a home as a principal residence. But as an investment, it is, because then now you can depreciate. Now that asset becomes a business, which now you can depreciate it, right? That's going to be huge on it. The depreciation is going to be a factor depending on the price of the home. But then now you can write off, which would be your taxes, which would be the interest, you know, on that property, the repairs, the maintenance that you would have, you know, and then all those things that's how you actually start creating more wealth, because registered nurses have you know, they get paid very well, like they get taxed very heavily. So if they're a W-2 and don't shift to a 1099, even by buying an investment property, it's going to pay out a lot, because they're going to get money back because they paid so much into the system. You know, so it's definitely a lot more smarter to be able to do that, because once you get one property and you get two, you can start be able to build more, because now you have depreciation that you can factor in.
That's good.
So it's important.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot: depreciation, interest rate, property tax. You said property improvements.
Yes.
And then depreciation was the biggest one.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, versus a primary residence, you only get two options, really, right? The interest rate.
Yeah.
And then awesome, man. Thank you for that. Yeah, I know a lot of people have been asking me about that one specifically. I know a lot of people ask me as well, should I file an S corp versus an LLC? But you did mention that as well, right? You said like it depends. S corp, you could pay yourself as a salary.
Yeah.
I'm an S corp myself.
Yeah.
Right. So, are you able to go a little bit more into like what kind of person would go with which?
Yeah. I mean, you know, if we're just looking at as far as, for example, like costs, when you file an LLC, you have to pay to the state the $800 that's due within 90 days of the filing, right? When you file a C corp, the first tax year that the corp is going to file its taxes, the $800 it's waived. So technically speaking, you would on an LLC, you would have to be paying $1,600 on the first year it's going to do a tax return, because you got to pay it 90 days when you file it, and then the following fiscal year.
Okay.
So you're already at $1,600. If you file a C corp, you don't have to pay those $1,600 because it's waived the first calendar year. Okay. And then moving forward, it's every year after that. So typically what I do is I'll start someone as a C corp, you know, so they can be able to save all that. Gives you the flexibility of being able to look at the business and then add a salary to it. And then once we look at the revenue, then we can shift it to an S corp moving forward because of the dividend. So that's why I say that doing a C corp allows more flexibility to be able to look at where the business is going and be able to offset tax liabilities.
That's awesome. So basically, it's not free to just open up a business. Many people just throw around like open up LLC.
Yeah, make sure you have a strategy.
Yeah, make sure you know exactly what you're doing, because every year you have to pay $800.
Yeah.
And if you don't, and you also because I know this when I did my taxes, it's an extra tax bill when you're doing your taxes.
Yes.
Yeah. It's not free.
You know, kind of switching sides, kind of talking about the year stuff, right? I know that you just went to an event recently, right? Towards the tail end of last year of I think it was like for tax preparers to get caught up on the new tax laws for 2023.
Yes.
So talk about that. Talk about that experience. How was that? What new tax laws are kind of coming out? I don't expect you to say all of them. I'm sure there's a ton of them, right? But like what are some of the new bigger tax changes going into the new year? Obviously, 2023.
You know, what really stood out a lot from the IRS that they're really making a strong push has to do with cryptocurrency.
Oof.
Cryptocurrency is something that they are now paying attention very well. And it really opened up my eyes how a lot of people that were doing crypto, and don't get me wrong, a lot of tax preparers, it's not their fault. It's even the IRS didn't even have any procedures in place, right? But what's happened is that people would go ahead and make money off of crypto, and then they would go ahead and do a transfer to be able to purchase something from that, right? Well, the IRS now wants the correct way for you to do it is you're supposed to, those withdrawals that you make, you're supposed to report that. And a lot of people didn't do that. So the issue now is that because they know a lot of people made a lot of money with cryptocurrency, they're going to be reviewing that. So even now there's a disclosure on the tax return specifically regarding cryptocurrency. So for me, what really opened up my eyes was actually cryptocurrency, because a lot of people just went ahead and made money, didn't report it, and then now they're going to have problems, you know? And I think it's very important to be able to pay attention to that, because a lot of individuals, and not everybody, but what I'm saying is you want to be careful with the cryptocurrency you did, because I've already seen this to where they're a corporation, and I had a client that was doing cryptocurrency and stocks, right? But he was having those amounts taken out of the corporate account, and yet the farms from the stocks and crypto was coming in from the personal. So the thing is that he's using that as an expense from the business, and it's personal, and you can't do that, you know? Now, the other thing too, I see other clients that are using the corporation to do cryptocurrency, but they actually have an existing business. Well, you want to be careful with that, because if you make $50,000, $60,000 or $80,000 or more, right, and the IRS wants to take a look at that, you're commingling for them to open up the books for your current business, all because of cryptocurrency. So now I've been advising my clients moving forward, separate it. Do not commingle it. If you have your own existing business and you're going to do cryptocurrency, either do it personally or open another entity to be able to do that. Don't run it under your existing business.
Yo, that's crazy. So people are actually taking funds from their business, investing in crypto, cashing it out, using it, not reporting the gains, and depreciating whatever assets they pick up from it.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, definitely don't do that.
Yeah.
That's a big no-no. What other, I guess, big changes are you kind of seeing?
You know, one of the things, too, is that the IRS is really creating a database, and I was actually kind of blown away with this one. So they're creating a database now that any entity that's registered, even us that register their corporation on behalf of the client, we actually have to input their information. We're talking about even their driver's license.
The person that registered the LLC?
The person that registers it and the actual officer. They're creating a separate database to be able to input this information, and it's already in law, but they're going to give it 2 years. Like, you're going to get penalized if you don't do this. There's a separate database that we have to input information, and all the officers have to actually now disclose.
That's
all of them, every single officer that's on there. So, you know, to some people, I would say the reason why they're doing that is because they want to be able to control, from my understanding, is to be able to see where all the money kind of went, and to be able to know, because with corporation, there's a lot of things that you can do. And sometimes you put officers on there and they say they don't own it, but they do, you know? So then now it has to be disclosed. So they just want to see more transparency than anything, is what I see. And I think you do have to be careful with that, because you want to make sure you're doing everything right. And I think that's where it really entails the habits, because if you don't know any better, you do those things, right? But that's where you really have to analyze the situation and kind of say, okay, let's do something better, because we want to avoid this. We don't want to have these issues in the future, you know, because with the IRS, you can get audited and they could go back 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, that's big. Yeah. That's big, man. Looking into the future, I mean, that's, again, part of, if you want to be successful in business, I mean, we could sit here and ask questions to Leo all day about tax questions and stuff like that. Obviously, it's the point of this podcast is to educate and elevate not only your business, but your life in general. And if you have more tax questions, I mean, reach out to Leo. We're going to put his description down below. We're going to put his contact information. I mean, we're always doing business together, so you guys are going to see a lot of content throughout the rest of the year and going forward. Switching over a little bit to more of like an elevational talk, right? Other than, you know, one of the things that I really like about you as well is you build a very close relationship with your clients.
Yes.
Right. I think that's something that's very big. I mean, we could easily spend 2-3 hours like right away, you know? Yeah. So, other than like taxes and that being your niche, what other kind of things are you into right now, man?
You know, for me, it has been personal growth. Yeah. You know, for me, it's been really evaluating myself and really understanding what I want out of life, you know, because, I feel this is where I connect with so many business owners and so many people on a personal level, is that, you know, we let time go by and sometimes we don't feel fulfilled. And that was one thing personally last year that I wasn't fulfilled completely, you know, and to me, it was very important. I was trying to search answers and to be able to do that, you know. So for me, I mean, and this isn't for everyone, but to me, I turned to plant medicine, and plant medicine, ayahuasca, bofu, really removed this veil over me. You know, it really allowed me to be able to appreciate the moment, you know, to be able to remove all these limitations that I had on myself, you know, because it really was things that I was doing for myself, you know, as far as limitations. So to me, I feel more connected to myself, and I think that also allows me to be able to help my clients more, because I care about that. You know, I care about my well-being. I care about my family. And every client for me is the same. You know, we're on the same boat. We're here to be able to, you know, be better than our parents financially, you know, make our parents proud. You know, maybe they didn't have an education, right? But they did the best that they could, right?
Yeah.
And to me, I think it's important because, you know, you can give them joy by being able to seeing their son, you know, or their daughter, you know, be able to become successful. They contributed to that, you know, because to me, I think that's important, you know, just to have joys in life, you know, to be able to share that with your family, with your friends, you know, and to be able to find like-minded people, you know, even me at age 44 right now and being with you that are much younger than me, you know, it allows me to see how important it is to be disciplined with myself and to add value to me. Why? Because I can be able to give this value on to you. I can be able to, you know, guide you or just give you my experience. For me, I'm not going to tell you what to do. For me, it's just simply sharing my experience. If something resonates with you, great, you know? And to me, I think that's important because it gives me even more value, you know? It gives me more passion. People don't know, you know what? I want to understand this. I want to better myself. Because if I overcome these things and if I can be able to share a moment with them and be able to have them have a different mindset or just spark a different interest or something, you know, a different thought, you know, to me, I think that's important because at the end of the day, to me, what I care about is unity, you know, and I think that in the Latin community is also important because we don't have that. We don't have unity. Everybody's out for themselves, you know, there just isn't that, you know, whether if you're doing well, then other family members isn't, you know, and all that stuff is really irrelevant because if you focus on yourself and focus on what you can control, which is you, that's all that matters.
That's a huge one. I actually had a conversation not that long ago. I think a couple of my cousins, we talked about that too, though, where it's weird. I don't know. I'll break it down where like in our culture, at least, it's kind of like if you talk about something you're doing well, it's kind of like bragging. All of a sudden, or like, mira, se cree mucho, or algo así, and it's like, no, I'm just trying to teach or educate, and also like it's about like empowering and like with unity. It's I actually read this book. It's called Powernomics, and it talks about like the economic potential of like ethnicity groups. So of the Latin and let's say the Black, they're the two lowest ones because the dollar leaves the community a lot. I got to reread the book, but basically saying that the dollar doesn't stay within the Mexican community. It's always being transferred outside of different cultures versus they compared it to like the Jewish community. The money stays within Jews. So it's like a Mexican business investing into another Mexican business. I'm actually investing into someone else's business instead of the money circulating with us.
You know what's crazy about that too is that I was reading somewhere that I think Spanish is like it's in the top 3 of languages spoken. So what does that tell us is that the Latin population is so big.
Huge.
It's massive. I think like number one is like I think China and then India and then the US. Something along those lines. Don't quote me on that, right? But it's definitely top 3, top 5.
Mm-hmm.
However, we're not economically caught up. Why is that?
Right.
It's because there's a lack of education within the Latin community, whether it be the Mexican, Caribbean, Central America, South America. It doesn't matter what it is, right? But what are we doing right now as Latinos to get more educated on business, on taxes, on economics, financial literacy? It's up to us. It's up to our generation. I think all 3 of us are really first generation here in the States. It's up to us to get educated.
Mm-hmm.
It's up to us to not only get educated financially and spiritually, or financially and in business, but also with our well-being. So like breaking generational curses, breaking generational thought patterns, right? Maybe plant medicine, it worked for him. It may work for you. Who knows, right? Maybe it's getting closer to your faith, whatever that may be, whatever that journey may be. But having a higher level of consciousness and being more aware of those things will ultimately help you in all aspects of your life.
No.
Speaking of the higher consciousness, I know you mentioned ayahuasca and plant medicine and stuff like that. That's actually something I've been personally interested in. I know I have a couple people as well. Who introduced you to that? And I know you said you were like you had a lack of fulfillment in your life. Has it helped you?
Well, for me, it was it took time. It was 8 years when I personally decided to just become a better version of myself. You know, and it was probably one of the worst points in my life. You know, that was a separation that I had, and I knew that I wanted to be a better father. And a better human being, a better person. So I really separated myself, and I just went on my own journey to try to discover things on my own. I came across it, but you have to have a calling for that, you know, and I wasn't ready for it. And events that happened last year, which was the lack of fulfillment that I had, really pushed me to go ahead and do it. You know, and I'm a type of person that when I make a decision, I go for it, you know. I'm very open-minded, you know. And, you know, coincidentally, you know, even Pablo, you know, referred me to, you know, Francisco, which has been a great mentor.
Shout out Francisco.
You know, GBS, you know, to be able to instill the spirituality and the personal growth of us as an individual, and really realizing that we're here to serve, you know, that we have a calling to be able to serve others. And all that really gave me a better understanding of a lot of things that I knew. You can say with Francisco, he has a platform for it. I didn't know a lot of the things that I did, and I realized I got confirmations based off his platform because I had no one to compare to. It was just myself. You know, I had no measure of saying like, okay, I've achieved this or done this or overcame that. I didn't. So with him, it gave me a better understanding. And not only that, is the community, you know, the people that are like-minded, the people that are in that struggle and are just really becoming better versions of themselves. And I think all that to me is why I love what I do, because to me, your business is a reflection of yourself. All relationships, your business relationship, the relationship to yourself is the most important one, because we are not raised to be able to know or process our emotions. We're not, you know? So to me, it's very important. If you really want to change the world, you know, I think that this is where a lot of people struggle in the community, is that you focus on everybody. You want to find a solution for everybody because we're caring people. You know, we do.
There for yourself.
But you can't do that. You can only make changes for yourself. Yeah. And the way that you do things is you lead by example.
Yeah.
You know, you start changing your life. You don't have to focus on anybody else other than yourself. And then things start changing. People will come and ask.
It's like what you attract. Like you are what you attract.
We say it all the time in the community, right? With GPS, is that entrepreneurship is an inside out approach.
Yes.
Right. You got to start internal. You got to start with your internal healing process, with your internal growth, personal growth, however you want to look at it. And then eventually that'll start to like come out naturally. And I think you put that beautifully, is that if you want to change the world, you got to start with yourself.
Yes.
Be the example. I say it all the time, right? Be the example you want to see in the world.
Yeah.
Right. You want to see fit people around? Well, get your ass in the gym, start working out.
Yeah.
You want to see people that are more educated with their finances, well, get your butt in the books and watch YouTube videos and get educated on courses and stuff like that. Watch these podcasts to get educated on how you could become more, financially literate, whatever that case may be.
In your circle. I
Yeah.
think like who you surround yourself, especially like
Massive.
it could be like your compadres in the hood or your compadres down the block, but at the same time, the people you grew up with many times aren't really evolving the same way that you are, and many times you have to kind of go set your separate way. There's this quote in The Alchemist. It's called "There's never been a king in his own town," something like that. Meaning like the people you actually grew up with or around you will actually not support you as much as a random stranger that sees you growing just because they might see you and I guess they kind of get envious in a way because you guys started out the same, but you may be elevating or trying to elevate yourself. And at the same time, that's when you got to adapt and change your circle. And
That's fire.
yeah,
I like that one.
Yeah, and I think it's important because mentorship is actually being able to see what others have done. You can't expect to excel if your circle is the same as you.
yeah.
You're not. So I mean, it's not like it's really coming on understanding and respecting that it's a journey. We're all here, and it's a journey. Whether you want to change or you don't, it's really irrelevant. It shouldn't be any of my concern, because at the end of the day, you don't know how everything's connected and how the world works. Because at the end of the day, you go out there, you face your struggles, you face your fears, you become a better version of self, and you gain all this knowledge and experience of yourself. And then 2-3 years come by, and your friends or family that maybe were separated from you, now you can come back and you can actually be able to show them without even telling them anything.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Leading by example.
Now they can share and say, hey, what's going on? Hey, now you have all this knowledge that you can give back. And I think that's very important, because to me, going deeper within myself, it's a vast space that I have no idea how much knowledge I have. And for me, it's very important to do that, because the more I know of myself, the more I can give back. I find that it's my priority to do that, is to be able to discover myself, figure myself out, have my own understanding, and be able to give back. Because that makes it so much more rewarding, right? We kind of fear all our struggles that, we're ashamed of, that we don't want to show. But that vulnerability that we can have for ourselves, you have this connection, because now you can relate to this other individual that feels the same that you did. Mm-hmm. That, when you felt like crap, now you can overcome that, and you can now guide that individual. And that's where this whole thing gets connected again. And I think that's very important, but it's just some people just don't know, or don't wish to be vulnerable, or just don't understand things.
You look at
it's
it,
okay.
I mean, yeah, that's 100% okay, but what's not okay is in my opinion, living your entire life like that. No. Like, you have to, at some point, come and have that, like, aha moment where it's like, yo, I got to make a change.
Yeah.
Right? In order to change what you are currently getting, you have to be willing to change what you are currently doing.
Yeah.
And that right there, I feel like, is a great segue almost into, like, chasing greatness.
Yeah.
You want to chase greatness in the world? Well, become a great yourself. Yeah. Somehow, some way. How are you going to get better? What's it mean to chase greatness for you, bro?
You know what? To me, I'm very aware of the choice of words that I use, and I don't use chase. I think is we are great. And I think, to me, it's showing those habits of being able to do that. And greatness can be a meaning for everybody differently. For me, it's to be disciplined, to be able to know how I want to design my life, and to be able to contribute to those around me, to those that I love. For me, as a personal note, an example is my daughter. I am doing my best to build everyone around me, my sisters, her mom, her brothers. Why? Because I always say this to my daughter: one day I'm not going to be here.
Right.
And the way that I know that I will have peace is that I did the best to elevate everybody else around her, because that way I know she will always have love. She will always have the support, so to me, that's very important, because I know that I work hard. I know that sometimes I'm not there, but the times that I put in with my family and elevating myself and be able to help them elevates them, and is going to be able to contribute back to my daughter,
That's
and
beautiful.
to me, that's the way that I see it.
That's beautiful.
That's awesome.
Man, I almost want to drop the mic right there.
I know.
We could keep going all day. Honestly, we could probably just keep going all day. Leo, where can people get in contact with you if they want to have a conversation with you? Maybe have more tax questions. Obviously, we talked a lot about tax and stuff like that. Where could they get in contact with you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my office is in Rancho Cucamonga. I mean, they can give me a call on my cell phone.
Yeah. We'll drop his information down below as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, they can shoot me an email, be able to call me, shoot me a text, call the office. I'll be more than happy to be able to sit down and talk to them.
Una cosa para la gente latina.
Sí.
Una cosa para la gente latina. ¿Qué le puedes decir a ellos?
Honestamente, es trabajar más inteligentemente, no trabajar con las manos. Somos muy buenos con trabajar en las manos. Eso sí, lo hemos enseñado, lo hemos demostrado. Pero para mí, yo pienso lo que es más importante es poder trabajar inteligentemente, de darnos cuenta de las cosas que estamos haciendo en nuestras finanzas, de poder analizar esas cosas, de poder tener policies como life insurance, ¿verdad? Porque creo lo más bonito que podemos hacer es nosotros, que somos la primera generación que llegamos aquí, estamos muy limitados en lo que hemos hecho. Y para mí, en manera como mi hija, es poder hacer las cosas mejor para darle a ella la oportunidad que ella pueda hacer lo que ella guste, hacer los errores que ella quiera, pero porque yo pude dárselo. No decirle qué es lo que tiene que hacer, pero poder darle la oportunidad que si ella quiere abrir un negocio, lo pueda hacer y sin miedo. Y si hace errores que van a costar dinero, no importa, porque de esa es la manera que vas a aprender. Para mí, si vamos a trabajar tan duros, hay que ser inteligente de darle esa oportunidad a nuestros hijos, porque de esa manera es como empiezas a cambiar toda la familia, las generaciones moviendo para adelante.
Trabaja con las manos. No trabajes con las manos tanto, use la mente.
Con la mente.
I like that.
Lo que dijiste, bro, that's a gem. That's a gem.
Yeah. That
was awesome.
Bro, thank you so much. Thanks for coming on the podcast. We appreciate you.
Bro.
Guys, look out for the next podcast. It's going to be a really, really good one. We got some special guests coming on. Armando, you got anything before we log off?
I just got to say thank you, Lil. I appreciate your time, bro.
Yeah.
Time is valuable, so I really appreciate you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Appreciate you guys as well.
Yeah,
very much.
100%. We'll see you guys on the next one. Educate, Elevate with Pablo and Armando. We appreciate you guys. Share this podcast with somebody.
Thank you, guys.